Art is History, AlbertBierstadt, The Frontier, and the American Dream. We've been studying the Romantic movement, which began in 1798 with the publication of William Wordsworth's collection of poetry entitled Lyrical Ballads. And this movement was very strong until the midpoint of the 19th century. The Romantics were reacting against the Age of Enlightenment, or the Neoclassical era, and instead of focusing on reason, logic, and science, they turned back and put an emphasis on feelings, the emotions, imagination. They had a great love of and respect for nature. They looked to the natural world as a source of truth, beauty, and inspiration. They were interested in the effect of nature on the artist and the individual, particularly when one is alone, surrounded by nature and untouched wilderness. They also had great respect for the idea of the noble savage, where these were the American Indians. The Romantics saw them as people who lived so close to nature, so lightly upon the land, and their people very rapidly disappearing. Signer of the Declaration of Independence, Dr. Benjamin Rush, was a physician during the latter part of the 18th century and early 19th century, and he wrote that man is naturally a wild animal, and taken from the woods he is never happy till he returns to them again. Emerson, the founder of Transcendentalism, wrote regarding wilderness and nature that the health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired so long as we can see far enough. William Cullen Bryant, one of the most popular poets of the 19th century, urged his readers to go forth under the open sky and listen to nature's teachings. The 19th century and the American Dream. During this time, the attitude of what America meant was one of great optimism and limitless opportunity, celebration of the equality of all mankind. They had great dreams for the West and of the West, and hopes for their future in a new land. Emerson again wrote, "America is another name for opportunity." Thomas Cole, one of the first well-known American painters, was educated in Europe, but then he returned to his homeland and began to paint what he saw around him. Living in the Hudson River area, his subjects were generally places along the Hudson River, and hence became known as the Hudson River School. The characteristics of this school of art were landscape paintings, great fidelity to nature, emphasis on the drama of light. Quite often these paintings have a luminous quality, also known as luminist art. There's generally a sunrise or a sunset. You can often see a storm in the distance, either coming or just past. Many of these subjects lack any human presence, but if humans are in the painting, they are usually dwarfed by the nature around them. Also, there is a nostalgia for the vanishing wilderness. Asher B. Durant, close friend of Thomas Cole, urged his fellow painters, "Go not abroad then in search of material for the exercise of your pencil, while the virgin charms of our native land have claims on your deepest affections." So other members of the Hudson River School, like Frederick Edwin Church, painted what they saw. And here is an iconic painting of twilight, sunset, looking towards the mountains, looking towards the west. AlbertBierstadt went far beyond the Hudson River Valley. He went beyond the Mississippi and out into the wilderness of the far west. and he painted what he saw and what he remembered and loved best about the wilderness on the frontier. His paintings capture a grandeur of the mountains and the magnificence of the open sky and the wilderness around him. And in order to capture this, he used very large canvases. So many of his canvases are like this one, life-size. They're 6 feet tall. Sometimes his paintings are as wide as 10 feet. When we look closer at this particular painting, we see the mountains continuing on into the distance. It's hard to distinguish between clouds, snow, mountains, and sky. And it has this luminous, dreamlike quality surrounding it. The people sitting on the shore of this mountain lake are those noble savages, those American Indians who live so lightly on the land, living peacefully upon the land, by the lake, quietly going about their daily work. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was one of the most popular writers and poets of the 19th century. His epic poem, The Song of Hiawatha, was a tale of the Native American tribes. He gathered stories from the various tribes among the American Indians and put them together in this epic poem that would document the lives and the way of life of these people who were so quickly vanishing. This painting, Bierstadt did as a gift to Longfellow, and is an illustration of the closing lines of the poem, where Hiawatha gets into his canoe and sails off into the distance, traveling west into the sunset. George Catlin was an artist who had traveled around the plains, the Rocky Mountains, and the Oregon country in the early 1830s. And he went specifically for the adventure of traveling and also to observe the native tribes in their natural setting. And he spent most of his career then painting these people, the chiefs, the people, their villages, their ceremonies, and capturing a way of life that he saw, as he says here, I have for many years past contemplated the noble races of men who are now spread over these trackless fields and boundless prairies, melting away at the approach of civilization. So some 50 years later, Bierstadt captures one of the last moments when the buffalo are almost completely extinct, which marks also the end of the natives in their native land. And he captures the action of the buffalo hunt, the adventure, a lone horseback rider out hunting amidst the buffalo. But we also see the bones and the skulls of other buffalo, indicating that this time is nearly at an end. Going west was an ideal that took root during this time. Henry David Thoreau, the author of Walden, was one of the first great naturalists, and he urged his readers to be the Lewis and Clark and Frobisher of your own streams and oceans. Explore your own higher latitudes. Go west. Make your own adventure. Make your own way. Travel in the paths that have not been trod by others before. And here Bierstadt captures this wilderness, this great higher latitude out in the Rocky Mountains. Here he goes further west to the Sierra Nevada range, and looking westward, we see the sun setting, or starting to set in the distance, leaving its glow on these mountains that just go endlessly as far as the eye can see. Again, we have the wildlife sitting by the peaceful lake. No sign of humanity at all. Here at the summit of the mountains, he's looking down on Donner Lake. Now, one thing about AlbertBierstadt, you would be hard-pressed to find the exact spot where he stood when he made these paintings, because he did idealize and sometimes painted things as he remembered them and wished to see them in order to create a certain mood and attitude about the wilderness. The camera had been invented and photography was coming along, and a camera would capture a moment exactly as it was. That was not Bierstadt's intent. John Muir is the founder of the first conservation group, the Sierra Club. He traveled extensively through the Rocky Mountains and the other ranges in the West, and he would tell his sister that, "I will confess that I take more intense delight from reading the power and goodness of God from the things which are made than from the Bible." And the more familiar line, "The mountains are calling and I must go." And people went to the mountains in droves. The Great Migration occurred between the years of 1841 and 1860, at which time nearly 300,000 people left their homes in the East, packed their wagons, joined wagon trains, and went west to seek their fortunes. 43,000 Americans would resettle in the Utah Territory. This painting records that great moment in American history. Again, somewhat idealized, but the people are traveling west to the sunset, mountains towering above, going through a grove of trees, following this clear mountain river. We don't see any signs of the dangers along the Oregon Trail, but that's not important in this painting. But we do have the words of from letters and diaries of people who made the journey, like this one from Henry Allen. "We have good roads comparatively. We mean good roads if the sloughs are not belly deep and the hills not right straight up and down and not rocky enough to turn the wagon over." Huckleberry Finn ends with Huck Finn deciding he's leaving home. He's heading west. He reckons he's got to light out for the territory ahead of the rest, because Aunt Sally, she's going to adopt me and civilize me, and I can't stand it. I've been there before. Here we have Bierstadt, one of Bierstadt's paintings of Yosemite Valley. Now, George Catlin, back in 1830, put forth the idea, what a beautiful and thrilling specimen for America to preserve, a nation's park containing man and beast in all the wilderness and freshness of their nature's beauty. And this was a recognition that wilderness and the frontier and untouched nature was a part of America, an important part of America, and an important part of for humanity. But the more people went west, the less frontier there would be, and the idea was put forth that there needed to be a way to preserve some of the wilderness for future generations. So, on June 30th, 1864, President Abraham Lincoln signed an act setting aside Yosemite Valley for public use and recreation. President Grant, March 1st. And so AlbertBierstadt tells the story of us He was an immigrant, saw the unlimited possibilities, reverence for nature, the West for migration, and the preservation